Welcome everyone. Today I have a new build guide for Diablo 4 for Necromancer in Season 2. Looking behind me, this is a very interesting showcase of a cold perma-freeze Necromancer. And currently we're testing this in tier 88 dungeons, and this one has some really good potential. So I really want to show you the build and also the mechanics and the combos for this build, because you'll be using some unique items and also certain pieces of gears which you normally wouldn't use for the Necromancer. And this turns you into a melee battle mage Necromancer with tons of disable, and it's quite interesting to play. And it's a very different change of styles compared to the darkness spells and also infinite mist with, corpse explosion. We still use darkness spells actually. And the darkness spells are great. It lowers your cooldowns, it makes you more durable, and you do have a little bit of feeling for like a rogue or barbarian while playing this build, which is quite interesting. Now, one of the highlights for this build is how quickly it can stagger and also perma-freeze enemies like elites and also bosses. Here we're facing a level 142 boss, and I'll just quickly show you the ability to stagger and also to, trigger the boss's disable. Now, of course, the boss is a little annoying during this time because of the circle on the ground. You're actually silenced while you stand in it. But you can see this rogue is almost on par or even close to the Twisting Blade disablement with the rogue. And this allows your entire team to enjoy the disable and freeze against bosses and also the monsters. Now again, with the Necromancers, we do have a little drawback in terms of single target boss damage. But once you stagger the boss, notice that we did about 30 or 40% HP within the span of 2 or 3 seconds. So this build works wonderfully if you have a team of... I probably should put the voice down a little bit. So this build works wonderfully if you have a team of players who are focused on getting benefits from disabled enemies. And this can be from the cold barbarian, cold sources, or any player that wants to enjoy the disablement with the staggers. Now we have updated this build onto my Mobilitics builder over here, and definitely come over here and have a look. I do have tons of other builds that's related in my builder list. So briefly explaining about the center core of this build, and then we'll go on to the stats of the gears and also the choice of the vampiric powers, which will make you very powerful. So one of the core pieces for this build is going to be the Bloodless Scream. This is going to be a unique item you can farm easily from the bosses, and the goal of this item is to allow your darkness spells to chill enemies up to 100%. This also allows you to gain bonus damage against enemies and also generate essence while they are frozen. So this allows you to become somewhat of a permanent freeze Necromancer with a Rape spell. Now you can see Reap is actually one of the main source of damage for the spell, but we're also using Blight for additional source of damage and also the Darkness triggers to give us more triggers of the Shadow Blight passive and also more procs of freeze against enemies. Now we're also using a number of unique items like the Taboo Swell, which allows you to get more resource and also unstoppable damage, and here we're using the Graves of the Empty Tomb, which allows you to spawn, mild shadow damage against enemies, and this also gives you some interesting stats which you normally wouldn't get, like the lucky hit chance with the shadow damage. Now for this particular build, it has the potential to use multiple uber unique items. Currently, 2 of the best items for this build is going to be the Shackle and also the Ring of Starless. You can replace the Mother's Embrace with Ring of Starless and also the Hat with the Shackle, which I'll show you guys the later part of the replay teaser. You can see my friend Death later on tries using the helmet and also the ring to some really powerful build for this one. Now in terms of the other legendary aspects, you're getting a blighted area against enemies which pulls them together. This is more of a utility for AoE damage. Over here you're going to have the increased armor by 66% with Disobedience. Now because we're going to have the darkness spells, and with Bone Storm, we will turn Bone Storm into the darkness spells. For the amulet, we're still going with the Shadow Blight passive to increase damage. And finally, for the rings, hitting enemies who are vulnerable will give you more essence back. So briefly talking about the stats of choice, you can see, I'll provide the whole replay for you guys to see in the tier 88 dungeon run. So you can see in this particular replay, the build is a little squishy because we're opting for a little more crowd control. But if you do go for more durability with a helmet and other pieces of gears and less damage a little bit, you can tank up for tier 100 and do those dungeons with no problem. Now most of the stats are pretty straightforward, maximum life, total armor, and here you have total armor and most of the damage reduction. Now because we're using Shiver as the main source of damage, And here you'll be having the ranks of Shiver on your gloves. And for the amulet, you can opt in for more, protection against close damage and also fortify damage. Here we went for more darkness spells and a lot of more damage. So this is a little more tailor-made towards damage, but if you want, guys, get a high roll on your weapon and everything else is pretty smooth for this build. Now briefly going through the gems and also the vampiric powers. The gems, you want a little more critical damage against crowd control enemies because you'll be crowd controlling them. You'll be getting fortified while, you'll be getting damage reduction while fortified. And for the accessories, depends on what resistance you're lacking. If you're not lacking resistance, you can go for the increasing armor. Now for the vampiric powers, we'll be going with a lucky hit chance to increase attack speed based on the movement speed. And Metamorphosis allows us to evade multiple times, and this will trigger the Pence's special effect. Now it's quite nice that the boost provides us with maximum evade charges to get more triggers with Metamorphosis. Here we're going with Shankun's Embrace to give us more Fortify, and this is quite important to gain tons of Fortify and also increase critical chance. We'll be going with Domination to give us more damage against disabled enemies who are frozen. And finally, if we go with Prayer on the Wake, we can enjoy a little more of the vulnerability damage, and this will allow us to do a little more damage against enemies while they're vulnerable. And also while they're vulnerable, you'll also be benefiting from the increase of essence gained attacking vulnerable enemies. Now briefly going through the sacrifice, we'll be sacrificing the skeleton warriors for the no physical damage resist, and we'll be sacrificing the skeleton mages for vulnerability damage. We'll be sacrificing the golem for critical strike damage, but if you find yourself a little weaker, you can sacrifice the golem for bonus life. Now in terms of the skill trees, I'm sure you guys can follow through, but one thing to highlight, we're actually benefiting from both of the core spells, with Blight and also Server. And over here you can see we're enjoying a lot of perks with the darkness spells, and here we're using the Decrypt as a way of lowering cooldowns. As we're going to go through the skill rotations, you're going to see that Decrypt will give us a lot of benefit. Now because we're sacrificing the skeleton minions, you can definitely go with all the perks over here to gain the damage reduction and also to gain the bonuses from the sacrifice. Now briefly going through the Paragons over here, it's quite straightforward. We're getting a little more bonus with the shadow damage and also damage reduction, and here we're getting more bonus against crowd control enemies. After that, we're going to the bonus of increased damage while fortified because they actually get a lot of that. And we'll be getting additional damage with critical damage. Finally, we'll also be enjoying a little more damage with close target damage and also having some close damage reduction. So the build itself is pretty nice, and it also allows you to play the Necromancer a little non-meta and also allows you to have more team synergies while you play the character. Now briefly going through the skill rotations of this build. So what you want to do first is you can start off with Blight or you can start off with your Decrypt. Decrypt will debuff enemies and allows you to lower your cooldowns, while Blight will hit enemies, give them damage over time and pull them together. So those two spells are really good initiatives. Now while you're low on HP, you can also be casting Blood Mist to give yourself protection from damage and also provide yourself with a little more fortified. Your main source of damage will come in from Blight, while it does damage over time, and also Shiver, which does tons of damage while enemies are disabled, while enemies are frozen. So together, this build is pretty well done. You can see a lot of enemies' corpses getting scattered as they get frozen. So it's definitely a nice build, and because enemies are frozen, they won't be able to do a lot of damage to you. Now with the Vampiric Towers, it also allows you to dash into enemies to spread your Vampiric curse and also to make them vulnerable. While doing so, you'll be doing more damage because of your unique pens and also gaining more essence. So remember guys, you have a lot of charges and also you have a lot of dashes. Make sure you use them to gain the Fortify and also Unstoppableness. Now the build can be a little squishy if you're not really careful with the ground AoEs, and you can see over here. So this is a little concern, but because you have a Blood Mist, you can easily avoid this one by casting Blood Mist. Now finally against the boss. Because you have so many ways of triggering stagger and also debuff effects, you'll be able to stagger the boss very fast. Save your spells, save your cooldowns against the boss when staggered, and you'll be doing tons of damage. So don't worry that you don't do enough damage at the start when the boss is not staggered, because once you disable the boss, you'll be doing tons of damage in those windows. And you'll be able to stagger the boss multiple times because of the skills and also combinations. So what I do now is I'll provide you guys with a full testing replay for tier 88. It can definitely push for higher, but during the time we couldn't get the perfect gears. And also I'll show you guys the potential gear upgrade if you do get yourself on the shackle and also the ring of the stylus for this build to become even stronger. Now, if you guys haven't subscribed, it is a really good time to do so, because I'll be covering tons of Diablo 4 related topics and also videos and also guides. We'll be looking to the top meta builds, non-meta builds, leveling up, and also Paragon tricks. We're also looking to the latest events and also official updates, and also changes to different characters and also different builds in the game. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and also turn the notification on, because a lot of you who are watching the videos have not subscribed. You can see 80% of the viewers who are watching our videos have not subscribed, so make sure you subscribe to stay tuned for the latest update for Diablo 4.